Come on, let's get some of that together. Let's have a go here. Okay, you're on. Come on, fellas. Get around a bit. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. You ready? Come on, you lot. Come on, then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team, the Reds is their name. Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight.
Morning all, how we doing? It's chilly up here this morning, hence the old bubble hat's come out for the first time this year. Really cold. How far the dog will go, we shall see. I'm going to do a little bit of talking about the Morecambe game today. First of all, apologies if you've read the article on the site. A little bit of a clickbait headline, unfortunately, which I tried. City winger returns to parent club, something like that. Jack Diamond went back to Sunderland for one game, for one training session. I think probably just to keep him as part of their squad, keep him feeling attached, but it doesn't mean a recall or anything like that. So it's just something to get the heart pumping on this cold November morning. So anyway, Saturday, Morecambe at home. It was actually quite a big game, I think, for us, because we've proven that we can do it against some of the best teams in the division. We were excellent against Plymouth 7 days ago. Before that, Barnsley and Ipswich and Sheffield Wednesday and teams like that we've dealt relatively well with. And for Morecambe, it was that test that as yet we haven't proven that we can succeed in. I thought we did well actually against Accrington. People moaned about it quite a lot. I thought a lucky bounce and we're 2-0 up against Accrington rather than 1-0 up, and when they get their goal they don't get back into it. There's very little difference in my opinion between Accrington and Morecambe in terms of what we put into the game. Probably it was a little bit more of an open game because Morecambe wanted to have a go, or certainly after they conceded they wanted to have a go, and respect to them for that. So there was very little difference, but we still had to go and get the points. And you look at the run of games that we've got coming up, and you look at the teams that we've played, places where we've already been, and you think, actually, we weren't in a bad position. If we can start picking up points against teams that we are, in inverted commas, I say, supposed to pick up points against, be in a bloody good position. And we are right now. We proved that. We picked up points against Morecambe. Results kind of went a little bit our way, and all of a sudden, we're the team at the top of that little mini chasing pack. Cambridge have been there, Exeter have been there, Shrewsbury have been there this season. All teams I think that we're on a comparable size to. You might argue that at this moment in time, our setup and our facilities and our average attendance is slightly better than those teams. But for me, they're the teams that we need to be finishing above. If we're going up against Ipswich and Barnsley and Portsmouth, we're punching above our weight. If we're going against Exeter and Shrewsbury and Cambridge and Port Vale, they're teams that we've played probably on a regular basis throughout my life supported. If you're going up against Accrington and Morecambe, you are expecting to win those games, even though Accrington have been at this level for longer than we have. But that's just fact. So we went into the game as a fan base expecting to win. Confidence was high in the fan zone beforehand. Lots of people saying, somebody's going to get a thumping, because they've seen that we're an attacking force. And isn't it ironic that we stood in the fan zone? I don't think it's ironic. I've got it wrong, like Alanis Morissette did nearly every lyric. But we stood in the fan zone 2 weeks after Chippenham, saying someone's going to take a hammer in, when people were on social media 2 hours after Chippenham saying, I don't see where our goals are going to come from. And it's that kind of season. But it's developmental season. It's a season of evolution. It's a season of, I think, reasons to be positive as well at times as negative. But there are some people that will just always be negative. But I think if you're offering a fair and balanced assessment, Saturday has put us in a position where we go into a 2-week break in the league, thinking this is somewhere we can kick on from, not somewhere where we can only fall from. And I don't expect us to finish any higher, by the way, the 9th in this division come the end of May. So maybe we are at the highest position that we're likely to be. But if this is where we are now, and we're not the finished article, and we're not the polished diamond, I think that's quite exciting for the future. Really exciting. And as I say, we've got a 2-week break now, so we can all focus on that huge massive tournament that's caused so much controversy. The Papa John's Trophy tomorrow night, Morecambe obviously at home. It's a great opportunity to go back, beat them again, which realistically should certainly be possible. Put some money in the bank, and then we can all sit back and take the time off, either making virtue signalling statements about the World Cup or just not watching it because you're not asked, which is basically me. So going to Morecambe, the Morecambe game on Saturday, there were certain moments that have made me wonder if the managerial appointment or the head coach appointment that we've made in the summer is not a calculated risk, it's not a Chris Sutton calculated gamble. I wonder if it might just be an astute appointment of a man who is on an upward trajectory and will remain so. I know some people will find it hard to gel to Mark Kennedy at times after chipping him, quite belligerent and abrasive about the abuse that he received. Probably rightly so, but it didn't. The manifestation of his feelings probably wasn't the correct manner in which to do things. And there's been times where he's been quite abrasive with local media, when people have gone, "Oh, he never tells us anything," and I can understand that to a degree. We had the same with Michael Appleton. People and personalities are all very, very different, and so I think with Mark Kennedy, it is. It's easy for people when we haven't had a good result to go, "I don't like this about him or that about him," when actually, if things are going against me and I come on and do a video, people will go, "We shouldn't have said that, or shouldn't have said this." That's personality wise. But in terms of the job, there are certain signs from Mark Kennedy that make me think that he could be on a real upward trajectory. And that actually, we always talk about £1 million players, don't we? But remember, we've already had our first £1 million sale, or certainly rumoured £1 million sale, which was Danny and Nicky Cowley to Huddersfield. Mark Kennedy's on a 4-year deal. Remember that. People criticised it at the time, a 4-year deal. If he puts Lincoln City in the top 10 this season, and it's a big if, when all of the pundits and the experts and not the top 20s were saying, bottom 4, bottom 6, that's eyebrow raising. And is it a fluke? No, it's not. A classic example from Saturday, which is going to prove one of the points I want to make, is TJ Aoma. So TJ was coming in for pelters at right back. Not really justifiably, I don't think. I think he'd had a couple of ropey games, but I also think that he had some decent games where people have already then got this preconception that he's not doing well in that position. And the same happened with Jamie Robson at left back. The same's happened with certain players in certain positions. I don't like him in that position because he's had 1 or 2 bad games. But Mark Kennedy doesn't have favourites, or particularly he's not afraid to change it if things aren't working, irrespective of what fans say. And I think if it had been last season, and I find it quite, it's not ideal to constantly talk about last season, maybe even a couple of seasons ago under Big DC, players had a position, they played in that position, and if they didn't do particularly well but the manager was backing them, they continued to play in that position. And I think towards the end of or the beginning of Michael Appleton's reign, there was question marks over Neil Eardley at right back. I remember him getting absolutely slated when we beat Burton 3-2. So there's always been a tendency for a manager to back a player playing in a certain position. A classic from the Danny Cowley era is James Wilson at right back. James Wilson was never a right back, but he never got a look in at centre back. That was the position that he had been earmarked. That was where he played. And if he didn't do well there, so be it on him. Mark Kennedy's shown a real desire, or a real willingness rather, to change a player's position if he feels it hasn't worked for them, and to almost hold his hands up when he's got that wrong, but when something hasn't worked. And that, I think, could be the sign of a really good manager. And TJ on Saturday proved it. When we saw Paul and TJ in the side, I thought of, we're going to go back to TJ at fullback, Regan Paul on the right-hand side of defence. That's where they've been playing. That's where Mark Kennedy likes them. But he doesn't just like players in certain positions. He reacts to form. He reacts to opposition. And playing TJ on the right of the centre-back, right of the 3 centre-backs, actually was a masterstroke, because it takes a little bit of the pressure off him in terms of playing a central defensive role, where I think at times he got exposed a little last season. It takes the attacking emphasis off him from playing at right back, where he's had a few tough games and a few decent games, but he doesn't get forward quite as much. But it also plays to his strength. He's good on the ball. He can carry the ball out of defence a little bit. He can go down the line if he needs to. just like Joe Walsh on the other side, naturally right-footed as Walsh is naturally left-footed, and it gave us a really nice balance. And I think it's telling that we've taken TJ out of what is predominantly an attacking position, you would imagine, at right wing back, and he actually has probably his best chance to score, other than I think he has got one goal, one of his best chances to score in a Lincoln shirt when he's got forward. Bit of freedom, a little bit, probably playing just with a little bit less pressure. Thought TJ was close to man of the match on Saturday. A lot of people sat around me thought exactly the same, and I think that goes some way to proving that Mark Kennedy is, a very good coach, because he's willing to change, he's willing to evolve. He's done it with the tactics, and we've talked about it on several occasions here on the Dog Walk, or rather I've talked at you about it on several occasions, where we started in one shape. It wasn't really working when we came into kind of Cambridge, so we switched things around a little bit, went a bit more attacking, conceded a load at Bristol Rovers, tweaked it again, kind of tidied up the defence a little bit, stopped conceding goals, came out of Port Vale not creating enough, more little changes. And I think that the most recent changes have really proven to be some of the best. I mean, Plymouth was one of the best games we've seen at Sincilbank in a long while. Morecambe, not so, but it was certainly a stark contrast to when we were struggling for goals at the same period last season. And it was a very different game, I felt, to, and I'm contradicting myself here with what I've written, but it was a different game to the 2-1 earlier in the season. It felt similar, taking a lead, Lincoln retreating, but I never felt that they were going to get the level of late on, as Fleetwood did, for instance, or Forest Green. I never felt that there was that kind of situation going on. So I think there's a certain control to our play. We are very good out of possession. We had less possession than Morecambe, and Morecambe are one of the teams that have the least amount of possession out of any team in the division. These were two teams who concede possession, both us and Morecambe. So how we imposed that onto them to beat them was really interesting. I thought we worked hard. We started with a good intensity. We got the early goal, and that forced them to then have the ball. It then forced them to try and break us down, and that then played to our strengths. Actually, we didn't really make the most of it. We weren't scintillating, but we did have opportunities once they had to come and get us, and that was the perfect game plan. And I'm sure that getting the early goal, getting ahead, making them then have the ball, making them have to come out and have to have an attack. And it was a real mark difference, wasn't it? After our goal, how much better they were, because they had to be, they had to come out, they had to play. And it's a good game plan. And I think Mark changes the game plan week to week. I respected, and I said it on the podcast, I respected Michael Appleton for having a way he wanted to play, believing in it when it had got success and got us to the playoff semi-final. Probably got frustrating when we didn't change it last season. Mark's the other way. Mark will change it game to game. And people say never change a winning team. I don't agree to that. I don't subscribe to that. I think if we are winning games, and Mark needs to change in order to... One second. You're right, Charlie. He's just come through that. He's not happy. I think he'll change it and he'll switch it up on a game-by-game basis. And I don't think there'll be any fear in changing things around a bit. I also think another pointer to Mark Kennedy perhaps being one of the next big things in coaching is one or two of our players' current form. And I'm looking at ones who we've had for a while. So Max Sanders. I mean, Max has been a revelation this season. I think actually Matty Virtue got your man of the match on the Stacey Westwood. Certainly did do last time I checked. So he's certainly doing very well. But for me, Max looks like a player energised. Sean Rowan is another one. Okay, so he's been out of the team, and that in itself, by the way, is another good sign. I know that sounds silly, but Sean Rowan got in the team, played well, kept Jamie Robson out. Jamie Robson's got in the team, played well. He's keeping Sean Rowan out. All these players believe if they get in the team and do well, they'll stay in there. Max Sanders didn't get that last season. Got in the team, did well, was dropped because whether we had our favourites or whether we had a perception of a set first team. And good coaches, good managers don't have favourite players. They have methods by which to win football matches. And I think, okay, we're quite winning as many maybe at home as we would always like to, but we're 9th in the table. It's time to be a little bit bullish. It's time to recognise the good things that are going on. I think you only have to look at Max Sanders. We've known from the moment he signed, he's got great talent. He was labelled as one of the next big things at Brighton. You know, the press loved him, the Brighton fans loved him. He's come to us. He's really struggled. He looks like a player reborn. I think also you have to look at Ben House. This time last season, he had scored something like 5 goals in the National League for Eastleigh. He came to us. He was never expected to impact the first team at the end of last season. I really didn't expect Ben House to impact the first team with quite the I don't want to use the word impact twice, but to have quite the kind of the impact that he has. I mean, what's he got now? 6 goals, I think 5 in the league, 1 at Bristol City. You know, he's actually a striker who will put the ball in the back of the net. And having lost Tom Hopper last season through injury, yeah, we had Dan and Lunderloo, we had Freddie Draper, but we looked very, very toothless. Remember when we went to Oxford, that game where we famously played no strikers and it was obvious, and we were really poor and got beat. I think Anthony Scully played out wide when he arguably could have played through the centre. Well, this season, Ben House could have been a Dan and Lunderloo or Freddie Draper. Minimal first team experience. Remember, he started the season playing in an attacking midfield role, so it felt like he wasn't even fancied as a striker by the manager. Puts him up front. You know, he does well, but then looks isolated. Tweaks the wingers a little bit, starts them a little bit tighter so that we look more like a kind of a tight front three rather than one up top with 2 wingers. And Ben House is raising eyebrows. And again, around me where we were sitting on Saturday, potential man of the match. I know he got, I think, the sponsors man of the match. Lots of people liking his work rate, liking that he looks like he's well versed in some of the dark arts. I'm not talking dark arts like Chris Maguire diving and spitting the dummy out and shouting at linesmen for not getting the ball back. I mean, nipping, hanging on the shoulder of a defender, getting in their ear. And there's something about Ben House. There's elements of his game. I'm not talking physicality wise, talking elements of the way he plays the game that remind me a little bit of Matt Reed. And again, I'm not talking about holding the ball up. I'm not talking about being a big lump. I'm just talking about he looks to pick a pass. He works incredibly hard. Matt Reed did work hard. He didn't seem to, but he did the work that he needed to do when he needed to do it. But then in House, you've got that kind of attitude, that Matt Reed attitude, but with mobility. You know, with the kind of frame that will allow him to chase and harass, that'll allow him to get in people's ears. You could almost imagine when he scored the goal on Saturday that had Accrington fans been behind the goal, he would have kind of turned and flexed his muscles in front of them. I get that sort of vibe off Ben House. And already, you know, Mark is talking him up a little bit in interviews, which I think is interesting. You know, we sign these players not with a view purely to go into the Championship, but with a view to making the money to allow us to sign more players. That self kind of perpetuating transfer model almost. That I know that people don't like the word model. I don't like the word model, but if Ben House has got 10 by Christmas, feasible. If Ben House scores 10 goals by Christmas and a Championship side are in a dire straits looking to drag themselves out of the hole, they might just come in with a £500,000 bid and you take it and you go for the next striker. And that's not trying to hawk the lad out at all. So again, I think there are some real signs that Mark Kennedy's making a good go of this. And the other thing that I like that I wanted to mention, and it's not really on Saturday, but it's kind of something that a theme that he's spoken about quite regularly is how different the side looks to how he imagined them at the beginning of the season. You know, and how he's kind of shaped and evolved his outlook or his approach to games with the squad, depending on how we've done, depending on the players that are available, depending on form, depending on all that sort of stuff. And again, I like that. I like that a lot because it shows he hasn't come in going, I know how things are done. This is how they're done. If you can't do them, it's your fault, not mine. He's come in and gone, this is what I want to do. That's not really worked. Let's have a tweak here. Let's have a move around there. And right now, and I know that nothing's won and lost in December, and if we were 20th or 19th right now, I would be making these points against myself, if you know what I mean. But right now, we're 9th in the table in a League One that, you know, I think is rated as better than it is by the names that are in it. But at the same time, we're 9th in the table, having not hit what I consider to be our top form. I mean, we've had some great results, but I keep going back to Fleetwood 2-1. You know, in injury time, should have won that game, should have had it wrapped up and won that game. We were better than Fleetwood on the day. 2 points dropped. Forest Green, absolute 2 points dropped. Dominated them until we scored, and then it all went belly up. Accrington, 100% should have won that game. as well and didn't. So there's examples of this Lincoln City team not quite being there, just having bits to work on, bits to work around. 3 games that maybe last season we lose and don't draw, but they're 3 points that could quite easily have been 9 points. You chuck those 6 points on, we would be comfortably 4th or 5th now, and that's unbelievable for the age of the squad. I think the average squad age is something like 23.9. So for the age of the squad, for the experience of the head coach, and not in a coaching capacity, he's been in football 30 years, he'd happily tell you that, absolutely. But for a head coach that's come in, has for the first time been the main man and has, altered how he wants to do things, has altered kind of on the fly. We're evolving. I just think that that's a phenomenal achievement to be where we are, with the potential to have been higher had we had, the rub of the green at times. Okay, I know it balances out, and I know Ipswich and Barnsley were arguably far more of an attacking threat than we were in our games, but we went and won those games. So, you are where you are. The table doesn't lie. It certainly won't after 46 games. But I just think there's a lot of reasons to be positive. And I think it's mad that just 2 weeks ago, there was people, the odd person, not many, but the odd person, I've had enough of this, we're not going anywhere, it's going to be. I remember walking out the Accrington game, hearing a guy, and I made the point, I stand by the gate, stand by the thing as I come out the ground, I listen to just snippets of conversation. I find it fascinating. I had a guy come out in his first instance, it's going to be a long, hard season. We're just drawing 1-1 with Accrington. And what were we, 10, 20 days on, whatever, I don't know. Lost track of time. And here we are 9th in the table. And I think that I've often said that part of me thinks that it's fear at times. I think a little bit of it's fear. I think it's fear of, we talked about, or we've had such great times recently. 2016-17, coming out of the National League, winning the Checkatrade Trophy, which, to be fair, not everybody kind of counts as a achievement, but it is. Playoff semi-final, winning League Two, playoff final on the Michael Appleton, semi-final of the Papa John's Trophy. Like, Lincoln City are a team over the last 6 years that you could call successful. We're a successful team. And I think there's a fear that ends. And that's why you hear things after Chippenham like club are in decline and stuff like that. And it just made me laugh. Decline at all. It's evolution. And sometimes you have to accept that you take steps backwards to move forwards in terms of the squad. Yeah, we don't have Brennan Johnson, or we don't have Joe Morell, or we don't have Morgan Rogers, but we've got a decent squad. And I think that fear of decline, that fear of us not being the big dogs anymore, talking of which, we'll turn around just a minute. Charlie, we'll go back, boy. I think that leads sometimes to the overreaction and the uncertainty around the new manager or the new head coach. And it seems crass to call him new now. It's November. He's been in since May. It's 6 months he's been here. But that uncertainty. But I just think it's, Saturday was a sign that we're in a decent shape. And let's face it, at the beginning of the season, there's 41 of you watching now, which I really appreciate. Thank you. If I asked all 41 of you, the day we kicked off against Exeter, would you take 18th in the table and a trip to a Premier League team in the Cup as a successful season? It's 39 now. 2 of you obviously didn't like that question. Would you take it? I dare say that absolutely everybody who's on this chat would have taken that. Absolutely everybody. I would have taken 20th and a cup run, a small cup run. And I just think finally beating a team who have come to set up and defend against us, or making them then play in another way by scoring the early goal, fortunate or not, whatever, but making them then come out and attack us, I just think it shows that we are trying to find ways to do things a little bit differently. Jason, thank you, Jason Addison, for answering. He says, yes, he would have taken that. I appreciate that. But I think we're finding ways to do things differently. It's going to be ups and downs, but if a bad run is a defeat at Port Vale and a draw against Accrington, which is, seemingly what the bad run was, and then obviously going out against Chippenham. But in terms of league, if 1 point in 6 is a bad run, and I think back to some of the runs that we had last season where we were losing at places like Crewe and losing at home to Accrington and Cambridge and teams like that, I'll take it. I will. Right, I'm going to disappear in a minute because actually my hands are freezing, absolutely freezing holding the phone. It's not a warm morning at all. So yeah, I just really wanted to do that debrief. Not really going to look ahead to tomorrow night. I won't be going. I'm not driving all the way in to watch the Papa John's at this stage with Christmas just on the horizon. I wouldn't have done it if it was a Saturday either. I might pay for it on iFollow so that the club do take some money. So there we are. But yeah, it'd be nice to pick up the win there, I think, and just put, I'm not sure how much it is for winning this stage, 20 grand, is it in the bank? Something like that. Be nice just to put that in the bank, go towards that January transfer kitty just for tweaking the squad. I think there's always room to tweak the squad. There's one or two positions where you think, well, we could do with a bit of cover there. If Regan Poole goes, we could definitely do with a right wing back to come in who we can aim for with the long ball. I mean, Poole's been excellent at right wing back. He's just such a good footballer. Definitely play championship football. There's no doubt whatsoever about it. And if he goes in January, it will probably be for the best for the club, just given that we'll take some money in for him. So let's have a look at some people who were on board this morning. Connor Pearce, good morning. Sean Simons, good morning. Colin Green, I saw Colin on Saturday. That was always nice. Morning, Gary. Hope you had a good night Saturday. Great win. Absolutely delighted. We would certainly have drawn that 5 weeks ago. Still need to work on seeing games out when we're 2 up, but nevertheless, such an important 3 points. Yeah, we do. And I saw a couple of people say that. And I think, well, to a degree, we did see the game out when we were 2 up because we won. But I get what you mean, seeing the game out at 2-0, not 2-1, and getting the squeaky bum time. I actually thought their goal was a decent goal. A lot of time, actually, for Morecambe. I thought they played the game the right way. I thought that they were a relatively tidy and clean side. You know, they didn't come and try and bully us particularly. I'm not sure we're all that bullyable at the moment. But yeah, fair play to them. I feel for them because I think it's a lack of resources that will send them out of this division, not a lack of coaching capability and not a lack of desire on the players' parts. Just once or twice, it was I think the end product. And you know, if they'd got an extra £500,000 to have spent on 2 or 3 players through the course of the summer with a little bit more quality in key areas, they'd probably be further up the table. So Ben Ward, not sure who he is, must be new. 9th going into December is Dreamland. It's tight pack, but we're there on merit. Chippenham feels a long time ago. Said the same actually to Chris as I left the game on Saturday. Seems mad that it was only a fortnight that Chippenham, we got beat and it was all doom and gloom again. And things changed very quickly after the Cambridge defeat, if I remember correctly as well. It was 2-0 at Cambridge. It was all doom and gloom. And then very quickly we turned things around. One thing Mark's team seem to have the ability to do is bounce back. You know, a bad result doesn't lead to another one and another one. And I think you look at Peterborough losing 4-0, Cambridge losing 2-0, Chippenham losing 1-0. We bounced back quickly from those games with positive performances, with positive results. And I think that's good. They've got a good mentality around the team that, you know, a defeat is a one-off, and we, you know, don't kind of let it build and let it turn into a horrible run. Sean Simons thinks Robson's playing well in his current position. Yeah, I like Jamie Robson. He's nippy. He gets forward. There's times where probably the communication between him and his winger will just need to improve over the course of some games. But I like Jamie Robson. Andrew Robinson, morning, Gary. Hope you had a good birthday. I did, thank you, mate. 3 points was a bonus. It was certainly nice. Yep. Second time in a row that my birthday's landed on a Saturday and we've won. So that's all good. Last time was Forest Green away. And if the result means the same as it did back then, happy days. Nigel Biggs says, greeting from the grey London. A good gritty win on Saturday. I personally think it was more comfortable than it looked. I found that looking back, actually, Nigel. Coming away from the game, I'd had a few drinks, to be fair, but you know, it felt like, oh, you know, was that close? We could have drawn that. We got through it. And actually, looking back, look at some of the chances. TJ's chances, a good one for Joe Walsh early in the second half, and you know, Morecambe did all right, but aside from hitting the post and scoring, they didn't really work the goalkeeper. XG suggests 3-1 rather than 2-1, would have been a fair result. So you're actually right, Nigel. I also think you could say the same to the Accrington game. It was 1-1, but actually I think that the balance of play was such that we should have won it. Ben says, it was interesting to hear the groans and moans when we were 1 up and passing it at the back. Really don't mind it. It forced Morecambe to come on to us and invited the break. Yeah, it did. We didn't actually, there wasn't a single chance from either side on the break, according to the Y-Scout stats, which is interesting. I don't think we played it around the back as much, but sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. That's football. That's football. And those of you that will be watching World Cup matches will see it. Certainly, you know, England have been brilliant at it for years, watching Rio Ferdinand play across the back 10, 15 years ago. So that's football now. And, you know, it can't all be Sunday League, get it forward, fight for every ball, 8-5 results and stuff like that. It can't be. So So Brian Rundle says Max this season is like a player reborn. He means Mr. Sanders. I agree 100%. Andrew Robinson thinks this squad is as good as any in the league, considering the size of the club. Interesting. I think we're comparable with any team of a similar size. I think we lack depth in central attacking areas compared to Portsmouth, Ipswich, etc. I did chuckle. There was I think somebody had messaged me and said that Portsmouth had claimed, I don't know whether it was Danny or not, claimed that they were struggling to compete with some of the bigger sides in this league in terms of attracting players and spending money. And you think, wow, you've got Colby Bishop up top, Dane Scarlett up top, Joe Pigott on loan, who would probably get into our first team. There's 3 strikers you can choose from outside. And then you've got others like, Hackett, Fairchild Hackett, stuff like that. I've got Ben House at the minute and Tom Hopper just coming back from injury, and that's it. So we've got a decent squad with the budget. I think we've put a half decent squad together. There are 1 or 2 areas where we could probably just do with a stronger option, but we'll see how things go. Simon Hickson agrees with me. He says he's not frightened to change things. That means Mark Kennedy. Jason Reeves says, hope I had a nice birthday, which I did. Bry Fox, ref went off the rails with booking the second half. I thought he was triggered by Tashan. Tashan got bumped, didn't he? And he went down a little bit too easily. And I thought after that, the ref it'd been a good, fair game. And I thought he'd had a really good handle on things up till then. And there was 1 or 2 moments. There was a moment for them where he waved play on for a foul and Stockton went to have the shot, but it was put out for a corner and he brought the play back because the advantage wasn't there. Now, I think that was probably the right decision because the advantage is in open play and we won the ball very quickly. Okay, it went out for a corner, but the advantage was lost and therefore it should have come back. I found that an interesting moment. I thought he had a good game. Then he did just, he booked Tom Hopper, I think, a little bit of a weak booking. Lass Sorensen's was a booking, though. I thought Martin Quay had a decent game. Alex Webber, unbelievable to see us in 9th at this stage of the season. The positives are we have winnable games to come, plus Bishop, Mandrew, Monsmer and Garrick to come in. Yeah, and obviously Hopper coming back to fitness will give us that extra option. It'll just allow us to close games out a little bit. We've got the home game coming up against Wickham, where I think that we're more suited to play against a team that like to get it forward and look to win headers and pick up the seconds, especially now we're looking comfortable with 3 at the back. And I think that will be the sort of game, as Ben alluded to in a comment a little bit earlier, where we will be looking to hit on the break. We'll be looking to have our pacey players in. And I think you look at Charles Vernon, for instance, who currently is an underrated member of the squad. It's almost like Vernon was playing because Mandrew's out and Garrick's out. Whereas actually, I've just got this feeling that Charles Vernon might go on to be a real key member of this squad just because he's pace and he's direct. When he gets the ball, all he wants to do is head down and run, and it does cause problems. And when you're playing like a Wickham, who we've got coming up at home, who you're going to look to load balls into the box and kind of get in and around it. If we can pick up those second balls and break quickly, as we did, I think, against Plymouth, the goal, I think that that'll be a huge advantage. So, Steve Leach, belated birthday greetings, mate. Thank you very much. Jamie Robson showing how good he can be. Indeed, he is. Cornell is on. Anything is possible for us up the imps. It is indeed Cornell. Morning, Les. Hope you're well, my friend. A lot of fans were underwhelmed by Kennedy's appointment. If they can't admit to being wrong, they don't understand football. A lot of people were underwhelmed with it. I know it was something that the club were fearful of a little bit. That they, especially when Michael Carrick started getting mentioned and everyone was thinking, oh, we'll get the big name. And, and we bring in Mark Kennedy, whose only previous experience as a head coach, not as a, because he's got a lot of experience in football, was at Macclesfield. And some people did feel underwhelmed. General pundits felt very underwhelmed. I asked Birmingham fan Gab Sutton, remember, knows loads about football. I said to him, tell me a bit about Mark Kennedy. He was your assistant manager. He said, don't really know anything about him. So he'd flown under the radar. I remember having a conversation with someone at the club the day before the appointment was announced. And he said to me, his exact words were, people in football will look at this and think, Mark Kennedy's a good fit for Lincoln City and Lincoln City's a good fit for Mark Kennedy. But those who are not in football, supporters and fans and pundits will look at it and they might scratch their head a little bit. And that's beginning to come true. And sometimes you hear something like that from people within a club, like with Chris Sutton and things like that, and it doesn't come true. So, yeah, I agree. I agree, Les. Ben says ref was all over Rushworth for the entire game, constantly hurrying up despite not time wasting, summed up by the confusion with our goal. Absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. Time wasting is a scourge. We didn't see it when who didn't time waste? We went to Ipswich. We didn't time waste. I think when Plymouth didn't, good games flow. And I didn't mind the referee hurrying it up. I don't want to see my team be in a shithouse or being shithouses. I don't want to see Chris Maguire antics week in, week out. Occasionally, every so often, yeah. I don't want to see Tashan going down for that challenge on the edge of the area. I understand it's game management, and I understand I'm contradicting myself from having said earlier that we need to close games out at 2-0. But I don't want to see it. And even if you try it, the ref stops it. That's his job. So I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that at all. And it was a bizarre moment with the ball. But you know what? Fair play to the referee. Fair play. Because if it was the other way around and we were 2-1 up and it had happened, we would be going, that's good refereeing. That get the game back on. We could get something there. So fair play to him. I've got no issue. No issue, though. And you say he wasn't doing it. Understand if he was. Stopped him doing it, though, didn't it? He didn't do it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's prevention almost. It is. It's prevention. I get it. I'm not just being belligerent because it's you, Ben. But I can understand how it looked. It looked kind of off a little bit, but it really wasn't. So we've got the Cornell question machine coming in. So I'll answer a couple. Do you think Cole Stockton would be a no? Do you see Hopper starting tomorrow? Yes. Do you see Bishop, Davenport, and Oakley Booth starting tomorrow? Bishop, no. Davenport, yes. Oakley Booth, yes. So there we go. Right. Well, thank you everybody for your time this morning. I hope you've enjoyed me talking into my phone at you. I do appreciate it. I know a lot of people watch back as well. I often get people come to the game and say, I never catch you live, but I do watch your dog walks back. So if that's you and you're sat at home with a nice cup of tea in front of a radiator, or even better, an open fire, lucky you, because I am freezing out here. My nose is literally running. You can't see it, but I've got moisture all in the top of my moustache. And I cannot wait just to finish this and wipe my nose. So thank you, everybody. Won't see you at the game tomorrow, but we'll be watching the game. We've got some content planned for the week, so we'll see what comes of that. And up the Imps.